Hello and what's up, guys? Jeff Kerdakis here with an episode that I'm super excited about. I'm here with Bill Ottman, the founder of Minds. Bill is one of my big inspirations for starting Uptrennd. He's a guy that I look up to, his ethos. I'm not going to pump his tires too much here, but Bill, thanks for coming on, man. Really honored to have you here.
Cheers, man. I love what you guys are doing too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So coronavirus happening right now, massive impact across the world. How is coronavirus placing an impact on you, your team, and you personally?
Yeah. So, I've been working in a distributed way for a really long time. Our team has gone through waves of, having offices and not, there's only ever been a few of us in one city at a time. We've got like 15 people around the world. And yeah, I'm okay with it. I think I have a family, so I feel lucky to have them here to be at home with. For people who are, single and, you know, used to having some sort of work community, I sort of can feel bad for them. And I think that it's really all about creating balance in your life so that, you're getting social. We're social creatures, so we need in-person contact to a certain degree. So I'm sure that's really hard for some people, but it's also exposing just huge weaknesses in the markets. And we already knew that distributed workforces were the future. Companies like GitLab and WordPress and, many others. Obviously the crypto world has been into this for a long time. So I think that there's benefits of it too, but it's hard for a lot of people.
Definitely. How do you see this impacting, once things eventually do ease up? Will there be more of a shift towards distributed work now that people see that it is possible? Do you feel that there'll be a shift or that things will just go back to normal essentially?
I've already seen companies saying that they're not going to be renewing their leases, like big companies.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, because they're probably watching their productivity and seeing, wow, we're still accomplishing work. Oh my God, people do work when they're at home, and maybe they're more efficient because, they can go, I don't know. There's a psychology to it. I was listening to a interview with Matt Mullenweg of WordPress and Sam Harris about this exact issue, which I definitely recommend people listen to. And, Mullenweg was saying that, I love to be at home because I'm just able to get more creative. I can just like bust out push-ups without feeling like a, crazy person.
Right.
At the
Yeah,
just
doing it in your cubicle.
Yeah, doing it in your cubicle. So yeah, it's just freedom. So freedom is better.
For sure. And I think that's exactly it. If the productivity is still there, then for these businesses, if productivity is the metric, then why are they going to be continuing to pay needless expenses? I think the fear is always of that micromanaging managerial thing where they're like, okay, if we can't see people, then they're probably going to be slacking off. It's like that boss walking by again, the cubicle, just making sure, checking in every minute of every day. But even then, there are solutions for people who want to run a micromanaged distributed work environment where you can do like the little screen recordings or screen snapshots based on different browser windows. So I think it's going to be very interesting, and that there might be some kind of push, a little bit of a de-urbanization where people start realizing, wow, these 2-hour commutes don't make any sense. This rush hour traffic, absolutely brutal. I want to live on the coast. I want to live in Thailand, Bali, where it's beautiful. And I'm just going to work from my laptop.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's really no comparison. I think that the places that get hit hard are the places like restaurants and retail stores and all that. Restaurants, no matter how far humanity evolves technologically, you still are always going to want to go to a restaurant. And even the best restaurants in the world are going out of business right now. It doesn't matter how successful they were. They might have been, having peak revenue, and now it's just total disaster. So that is just, it's terrifying and heartbreaking. And I don't know too many people who have point blank lost their jobs, but that's just because I don't have friends. No, I'm just kidding.
More in a distributed world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you see things playing out? Because like you mentioned, so many small businesses are going under. In Canada, where I'm living right now, we're super lucky. Government's been giving a ton of stimulus packages to small businesses, $40,000 forgivable loans, $2,000 monthly packages to residents. So people are able to get by and like keep the doors open and keep their livelihoods going. But I think it opens up a really big conversation of, I guess you could say, libertarianism, of people who are like, get back to work, every man for himself, like let's do this, versus maybe like in the Joker movie where it really highlights, I think we need to take care of people who aren't fortunate, because not every country is like Canada where they are just handing out money, which introduces a whole other thing of inflation and all that kind of thing. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Um, what specifically?
Yeah, I guess the question would be, what do you anticipate to see, how small businesses and the economy progresses through this time?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So the fact that there's this tension between, people advocating for reopening versus people advocating for more lockdowns. I mean, it really is a micro macrocosm of, yeah, like political philosophy. It's almost like,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's the science, which is just the science. And I think that no one's going to deny that there are extreme risks associated with just like completely reopening things. So, science isn't necessarily political, though politics can leak into, certain publications, and certain scientists can have that floating through their head. So, I mean, it's not black or white. I don't think that we should be thinking about this in a blanket way where, it's about reopening versus locking down. It should really be a data-driven process where we're looking at the places where it could be acceptable to reopen. And I think, yeah, we should want to reopen. I mean, we can't just endlessly live in fear, but we also, need to be as smart as possible. So, in terms of the economics of it, at the end of the day, people need to figure out how to create revenue streams for themselves, and, not being reliant, regardless of if there's value to certain government stimulus or handouts, that's sort of a secondary question. At the end of the day, it's always going to be better for the individual to have independent revenue streams. And I think that that's where we have a lot of commonality is, with the projects that we're working on, and trying to create revenue streams for independent creators.
For sure. Because a lot of people ask me and they say, how can I make money online? And it's like, a lot of times before it was like, go to Upwork, go to freelancer websites, see what people are hiring themselves out for, see what you like, develop a skill and put yourself out there. But I feel like, especially now that there's such an influx of people that have now moved into this reality where they're like, I'm going to be doing that. So it's like the
Mm.
supply and demand economics are totally out of whack. Now there's way more supply than there is demand for workers. So yeah, platforms like we're building. So you're building mines right now, and a big ideal is to be able to provide income to people who are putting value online. Can you just kind of give a good overview of mines for people who are listening, and what the ethos is, not just necessarily the mechanics?
Yeah, so Minds is a open source social network dedicated to privacy, transparency, uh, decentralizing, monetizing, and we're really trying to do everything the opposite of Facebook, Twitter, Google, all the big tech companies. For the most part, I think what they've done well is create good platforms for media sharing and communicating. The
Mm-hmm.
software works well, but it's sort of infected to a certain degree. And so, the functionality of Minds, it feels, mobile app feels very similar to some sort of hybrid of a bunch of those. But what we've been focusing on super hard is building this wallet where people can monetize both in their local currency or in crypto. We support Bitcoin, ETH, the Minds token and your local currency. And so we have a few different monetization features. One is like a subscription based feature where you can offer exclusive content to your supporters. We also give everybody tokens every day for their contribution to our overall engagement. And basically you earn tokens based on your contribution relative to the total network. And then tokens are pegged to views. So one token's worth 1,000 impressions, and you can boost your posts with the tokens. We also just launched Minds Pro, where we're actually paying people out in whatever currency they want, straight up for the page views that they're driving to us. Mm-hmm. So we just actually in March did our first payout to creators for that. Paid out thousands of dollars to people for helping us drive traffic. And that's without even any ads. And the way that that's working is we're actually splitting the revenue for Pro with the users who are helping us drive traffic. So
you had a little more color to that, because it would make sense, if you're driving traffic to ads, and then so those ads monetize onto the website. So it'd be like you're bringing money in, you're getting paid money out. Can you explain a little bit how like the Minds Pro ecosystem is really related to that traffic that you're driving in, or that they're driving?
So we're gonna bring in the ability to. That's kind of where it's going with serving boosts on your channel, and that option will be coming. But right now, so with Minds Pro, you can use a custom domain, you can customize you can basically create a website with your Minds channel, and you get more features like more storage and that kind of stuff. But you also get these monetization features where you can earn commissions based on referrals, and in RPM, it's actually in March, it was a 10 RPM for every 1,000 page views. So $10 for every 1,000 page views. Wow. And we're basically taking our revenue as a company that we're getting, and we're just giving it to the people who help us drive traffic. In terms of, how that RPM is going to evolve, and, the deep economics of how it's ultimately going to play out with more of a critical mass. I mean, that's sort of to be determined. We're obviously, you need money coming in order to be paying money out, but we do have money coming in for the subscription for Minds Pro, and we're just basically sharing that with the people who help us grow. And I think it's working so far. Right. Ultimately there could be some scaling issues with it, but that's why we can bring in sort of ad sharing and whatnot.
So essentially you're selling Minds Pro, or Minds Pro is, on the marketplace, available for purchase to people to upgrade their accounts. All that income is coming into a big pool, and then based on the number of page views that people are driving, it gets distributed relative to that number of page views.
Right.
Gotcha. So right now, there's a lot of different value adds that Minds is bringing to people, whether it's monetization, freedom of speech, decentralization. What do you feel is the main driver that's making people stick to a new social platform? Because obviously people get so complacent with Facebook and Twitter. To drive them to use something new is really like twisting an arm. So yeah, what's that big selling point and sticking point for you guys?
The reach is big, especially for smaller creators. Even though we're just a couple million users, small creators are actually finding it easier to get external content on Minds than on Facebook. Because Facebook's algorithm is so restrictive. Sorry if I'm cutting out, but people feel like they can get more eyeballs on their content. And, that is hugely valuable to anyone. It doesn't matter if you care about freedom of speech or not. Engagement is huge. And people are really frustrated with, their likes going down on the big networks. So, that's something that really hits everybody's nerves. You don't have to care about ethics and privacy. I think that, and that's why we've really focused on the philosophy, but also the human nature component of rewarding people with more reach and revenue. Because if you hit both of those, it's pretty bulletproof. I mean, because
Sure.
you know, the core community that we certainly want people who understand the philosophy, but you know, in order to reach the mainstream audience, you need to be providing that more, you know, just primal kind of need to help people survive.
Right. Yeah. And I think what you mentioned is, recognition, appreciation, getting the views out there. That's what people are craving, like that big dopamine hit from a like, I think is very real for a lot of people. And so, being able to get yourself out to the people that you want to get yourself out to is so important. And like you mentioned with Facebook pages, just the engagement on pages is absolutely crushed. But I think it maybe is a little bit more of a can of worms to open up in that regard, because for example, on Twitter, you follow two people, you're only going to see two people's stuff, maybe a couple suggestions on things they like, whereas on Facebook it feels like this whole universe of things that you can follow, from pages to people, and beyond, and there's only so much that can fit on the page. So I guess my question is, potentially like the dilution aspect of visibility on Facebook has come through just by people being on there for 10 years plus, subscribing to 1 million people, 1 million pages. How does Minds anticipate to be able to scale with this issue as people are subscribing to, hundreds of people, hundreds of pages? How do you scale that out?
I still think that you provide people with a raw feed. And then if you want to have a secondary feed that can be a little bit more, algorithmic, I think that's okay. But the core feed needs to be raw, in my opinion, because I don't really care if I've subscribed to hundreds of things. I mean, if someone's pissing me off in my newsfeed, goodbye.
Right. And by raw, you mean
you know,
chronological, yeah? Or reverse chronological?
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And, that's just something that we've committed we're never going to change. And it's not to say that algorithms are bad, but they are bad when you have no choice but to use them, and you can't see what they're doing.
For sure. And I think you bring a good point, because a big reason why these algorithms exist for Facebook is the stickiness, how long people spend on the website, how many ads get. Everything's just a big money game for them. Whereas, if the ethos is a little bit different, then, you don't have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders, for example, then you can switch that up a little bit.
Even if you do, I think that, ultimately it's short-term money, what they're doing with the algorithm. I mean, they've destroyed trust. So because, when all the brands that you bring on come on and they can drive all this traffic to their website, and they're, spend a lot of money building up an audience, and then you take that away from them. I mean, the fact that they have people addicted and everybody keeps using them even after that algorithm changed, okay, fine. Yeah, people still were dependent on it and they still use it. And so you're still growing. But that was a horrible decision. I mean, in the long term, because it's just another one of dozens of betrayals of the community.
And I think, you look at a company like Google, their opening motto or ethos was, don't be evil, I believe. And since then, I feel like that has changed drastically. I think they've officially removed that now. And, like small little incremental steps of betrayal. How do you, I feel like it's just a slippery slope, like one small clause or one small variance, and then it just allows for another and another and another. How do you see that playing into the Minds ecosystem in terms of like an immutable place where the community can trust what's happening, and that, the inevitable progression as things get bigger and you start to realize, okay, you know what, maybe we need to start removing some of this alt-right speech on the platform just because it's creating such negative, like an overall negative vibe. And then, you turn into like a YouTube or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that pressure inevitably grows as you grow. And so I think certainly in the early stages, building architecture to prevent yourself from doing that in the future is really important. I mean, we've already made serious commitments in terms of policy, but we do have work to do architecturally. We've been looking at a really cool blockchain called Arweave. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I'm not, no.
Oh, you got to check them out. So they call it a block weave, and they're building a perma web where basically it's just like a immutable content system, distributed content storage. And so, we're looking at enabling people to publish both to, our servers and also an immutable system. And,
Right.
I
so
think
it'd be structured like a schema or a Hive, for example.
Yeah. But it's about providing control. So giving people the option of how they want to publish. So I don't think you should have to publish to an immutable system. I think
Right.
that you should be able to.
Mm-hmm.
And, depending on if you want to be able to delete in the future, you may want to publish to a server, a central server. In the blockchain space, there's a lot of just fluffy talk about centralization, and it's not really, I think, totally genuine, because acting like decentralization is the future. It is the future, but it's not the only option. Like, there's value of central servers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit hyperbolic, but it is important to be thinking about.
Definitely. I fully agree is that, everyone is really on the decentralization train. And you can look at the Bitcoin ecosystem as a perfect example of what happens when you just have such a firm pressure on decentralization is you're stuck with, 3 to 4 transactions per second in 10-minute block time. So you're decentralized, but you're certainly not scalable for potentially the intended purpose. So yeah, if you have 1 million nodes running mines and everything's getting uploaded to a decentralized immutable server, it's like, that's all fine and dandy, but there needs to be some form of scalability. Otherwise, how do you run something like a payment network or a social media platform?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why there's other accountability tools that you can have. That's why open source code matters. That's why audits matter. That's why, just transparency in general about what's going on matters. And so, you can have centralized computing systems that are still heavily accountable to the community and help provide a good experience, while also constantly pushing the envelope in, building distributed systems, which is really important. And I think that we all agree that if we can build scalable distributed systems, that's awesome. And we want to offload as much of our infrastructure to that as we can over time, as long as it makes sense.
Definitely. And so with these decentralized distributed systems, it brings up the issue of legality of potential content that's getting uploaded and hosted there. Obviously, you can have a protocol layer and a front-end layer. So maybe just add a little bit of color on, how can a distributed social media network comply with laws when, in fact, you are a company with, a figurehead and someone who is able to have, their hands put in cuffs?
Yeah, we have to follow the law in the US. So we do. And so, we are abiding by the First Amendment in terms of our content policy, which is way more free than any major social network. So, in terms of legality, when you get into these distributed systems like torrent systems and blockchains, and it's hazy, to be honest. I think that you have to be pretty crafty in terms of how you structure the company so that actually the code isn't owned by the company, for these open source protocols. Because when, that happened to like Napster, and it's happened to other peer-to-peer systems. So you sort of need to create, and that's why Bitcoin is working so well, because there's no company.
Right.
There's not even a person you can pin it on, and that is structure wise, sort of a requirement. And so, releasing protocols anonymously is very strategic with regards to, if these systems are going to be able to work, so that the authorities can't pin their finger on a certain maintainer.
Yeah, and I feel some laws have validity. A lot of them certainly don't, though. And so these systems that work outside of laws are hyper valuable. But then when I feel like zoom out to say the sky or scale up to the size of Facebook, for example, let's say you have 3.5 billion users, and let's say there's some illegal activity that's happening on the network, and it's all open source. The code is immutable. It's hosted on anonymous nodes. I feel like they're still going to be trying to go after people. So even I feel like the only way to run it is like a fully anonymous DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, where people are even pushing code anonymously. Because I feel like at the end of the day, all these authorities, as much as we want to think that we can just Bitcoin isn't that bad, I guess is what I'm saying. But if people start uploading child porn to this distributed social media website, there's me people going after it because of the public pressure. And if people are uploading code to this website or doing anonymous marketing, guaranteed authorities are going to be really trying to figure out how they did it or who's doing it. Sorry. And you look at something like Silk Road, they're going to find you. So yeah, I'm curious, if you could add a little bit more color on your thoughts on, is fully distributed outside the law social media network really even possible?
I'm pretty sure Arweave is running a DAO in order to allocate, in order to run that layer, and they certainly are facing this issue, just as Steam faces that issue. And I mean, they will come at, you're right, that is what will happen. They will come after whoever they can. And it's not to say they shouldn't try to, because certain content is just, I mean, the thing is that you can't reverse the past. So regardless of how horrific it is, you can't change the past. And so it exists. The way that Arweave is approaching content moderation is through these gateways. So there's the permaweb, as I read their white paper once, but different access points can run different gateways which have certain policies. And so regardless of if that core foundational layer exists with all of the content, like the network that's interfacing with it won't be able to see a lot of what is on, what is fully accessible. And at the end of the day, I don't know how they're going to handle it, because it's going to happen. There's no stopping it. There's going to be dozens of these systems that start to emerge, and there is no way to stop it. So they can try, but it's not going to work. And there are going to be more people going to jail, and people have to be really careful about how they do it.
It's a crazy thing, and it reminds you a little bit of the ICOs in 2017. A lot of people were doing essentially illegal fundraisers, but because it was at a smaller scale, regulators, there's so many, whatever, we don't really care. But then there's a couple that get large enough that they make a big example of. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing with, for example, like something like Arweave is doing. It's like, for sure, maybe there's a couple fringe things here and there. There's, the dark web is just an abyss of illegal activity. But it's until it gets to a scale, that's when they start getting attacked. So it's like, it works until it doesn't, I feel.
Yeah. And, ultimately, if a system can achieve a network effect to a certain degree, and, there's, that's the goal. So if we can build something that reaches a critical mass, then it's going to feel pointless for regulators to try to take it down. I mean, it would sort of be like, with encryption. The same thing sort of happened with PGP, and then it had to get smuggled. Like the way I don't know exactly how the story went, but they printed out the code and walked it over a border because the tech was you could print it out.
Right.
And so I forget. It's a fascinating story of because encryption is regulated in certain places. So it's a very similar tale of sorry, they're doing the lawn, but if it's loud, they're mowing my lawn.
It's all good. It was loud for a second, but it's back away. House life, distributed life. That's how it goes. I know the struggle.
Dude, my landlords mow the lawn like 3 times a week. They're neurotic, so I don't really know what they're doing.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you have landlords that are mowing your lawn 3 times a week, that means you have landlords that care about maintaining the property. So I think that's a lot better than most people can say. So it's a silver lining there.
We've gotten into a debate about maintenance of the grounds. Unfortunately, I don't know, man. I'm not into lawns particularly. I'm certainly not. We're trying to grow a garden, and they're trying to like fertilize everything, and with all these weird fertilizers, I'm just like, we don't know. We don't want it. Like, we're trying to build an organic garden.
Right in the front yard.
Yeah, no, well, not in our front yard. It's in our backyard, but like, they do all the fertilizer. And so
right.
It's, it's been a little bit contentious, but I think we won to not have fertilizer on our specific yard, which is good.
It really is such an interesting dynamic, and how lawns are just this big epoch across the world of just like, do this thing twice a week, keep it short. Whereas, you could have such beautiful flowers, little wild grass, vegetables. Yeah. There's such like a grass. I mean, who lays on their lawn? Less than 1.1% of people. But, like flowers, gardens, like could be so beautiful to have. It's so strange.
So beautiful and, healthy to the local ecosystem. So, I mean, I'm not against lawns. Like, if, like you said, if you're going to do something on the lawn, even if you're going to play golf, like, fine, play golf. That, in the case of golf, you need a lawn. But that's just one of those things that I feel like will be looked back on in 1,000 years. And they're just going to be like, look at this weird phenomenon of everybody having this little spot of mowed grass, and they pay so much money to maintain it, and they never go, like, if aliens were looking at us, it's like they're harming their own ecology. They just like to look at it. They don't go on it. It's expensive. It's just so odd, and it's like a mass trance that everybody's in.
Yeah, it takes up half your house's footprint, difficult to maintain. There could be something nicer in there that's easier to maintain. 100%. I was just listening the other day to the podcast you did with Pomp, and so I heard you guys talking about aliens a little bit. So if aliens, well, let's just assume they exist. What else? They're looking down at Earth and they're seeing our lawns and the ridiculousness. What else do you think on Earth alien would look at and be like, this is just insanity? Like, what are you guys doing?
That is a good. I mean, I think that. Well, the real question, if you want to get into alien conspiracies, is, if I was an alien going to another place and saw them keeping all the information, the government's keeping all the information secret from the people, I would be like, well, that's a clear problem with that civilization. There's sort of like 2 different civilizations almost in one. You basically have people who have access to all the information and technology, and people who don't. And regardless of some people would say, okay, that's happening on Earth right now. People who think that aliens are here, who knows? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But the point is, we don't even have enough information to know if that was ever the case. So, I think that there's conspiracy theorists, to a certain degree, have justification for being a conspiracy theorist just based on the fact that the government isn't sharing the information. So
Hmm.
there's an argument to say, well, you can't prove that I'm not that we're wrong because you have information that you're not showing us. So if you declassified, all the files related to everything that you have, and then, the cards are on the table, then okay, we can get to the point where, you could actually debunk that community. So,
Hmm.
I think that,
Do
that's
you
an odd
feel
thing.
do you feel potentially like if aliens, were okay, we unanimously, there's proof around the world, we've declassified the information, and now aliens exist. This is point blank. I feel like the state of the world would change so drastically. And I don't know how it would change, but I feel like people's priorities and perspectives and 9 to 5 hamster wheels would get so unhinged so quick.
Oh,
Um,
talk about, if, what we're experiencing now with a social shift, it would be, there's a really cool book that Richard Dolan wrote called After Disclosure, AD. And it's sort of a thought experiment of that exact question of, if the government got on a press conference, said, listen, we're being engaged by extraterrestrial civilization, it just goes through the thought experiment of what would happen. There would be religious unrest, people would be gathering in the
right.
streets, the economy would shut down because everybody would want to know more information about, if that information comes out, then what is more important for everybody to know than that? Because, at the end of the day, why are we all here? We don't, right now we're sort of in this routine where,
Right.
we don't know. It's like, you have atheists, you have agnostics, you have religious people. We're sort of able to justify just going day to day, having a job because, we just don't know.
Mhm.
But if authority figures started telling us that that was real, then there would just be every reason to drop everything that we're doing in order to find out. I mean, to be honest, for the people who go deep enough into classified information, they've made it their full-time job to figure out what's going on, because like Richard Dolan is one of the best UFO researchers out there, like totally empirical. He's not going off on, any woo woo. He's like looking at the classified that exist. And so for those people, it's like they have dropped everything to figure out what the hell is going on, regardless of what's true. It's like, how could something be more important than if there are aliens floating around in our solar system right now?
100%.
But
Because I think, yeah, you bring the point
our
of
yeah.
religion, and I think that totally unhinges religion. And, over 50% of the global population, very likely way more than that. You have this mass amount of people that just have no sense of purpose, no sense of direction, no sense of self. Because for a lot of these religions, it's like, okay, no, here's what happened and here's the story. And if something goes against that, well, I mean, we're kind of SOL. But just kind of like devil's advocating in my own head here right now. I think, you see in America, Trump, for example, says a lot of things that may be lies. But then people just hop on board no matter what. They're like, you know what, even though all these lies happen, like we're still okay with it, like for the greater good. So potentially, they'd still be like, oh yeah, I mean, like even though aliens are here, our religion is still legitimate. I don't know. It's an
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, there's because even if the government said that, like obviously there would also be the conspiracy theorists who think that they're lying to us in order to create. I mean, there's a whole conspiracy about that. I think it's called like Project Bluebeam or something like that, where governments project holograms of UFOs in order to create a new religion and control structure so that everybody follows along that. I mean,
Really, that's where the
I mean,
flying spaghetti monster came from.
yeah. So, but it's not totally crazy. I mean, it's crazy, but governments know that they can control public perception. So, I mean, look at what even COVID has taught us about how the general population can be controlled. I mean,
Hmm.
in one light, it's actually a beautiful thing. I think, people without being forced have gone into social distancing, and because, we want to be healthy, people, aren't resisting too much, but it's also, the people who are resisting are doing so not for, horrible reasons. They don't want to be controlled, and they want to be able to go outside. And I think they do have that right, and they should have that right. That's our Constitution. So, but what the whole thing has shown is that, wow, people will really just go into isolation for months when the government tells them to. The uh, coronavirus exists. So if they were to say that, we have information that leads us to believe that aliens are here, I mean, they could say that and cause, themselves to be put into a super powerful control position. And it would cause tons of problems. But yeah, I don't know. It's fun to think about. I'm like you. I like to play devil's advocate with myself and look at both sides, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think one common thread though is that freedom of information is a very powerful thing in the way that it can control public perception. I think what we're seeing with YouTube, for example, right now is absolutely insanity. Because you have a virus that acts on the lungs, and so I won't go like full holistic doctor here, but like I'm sure there's different things that can help open up alveoli, help with your immune response, boost your immune system. But if it goes against the World Health Organization, we don't allow it on YouTube. And 2 months ago, World Health Organization said no masks. So, and I mean, there's different reasons for that, but I think to trust this central authority on health when really, I don't know how much trust should be put into them. I'll just pass that over to you. Like, what are you seeing right now with like, this YouTube, this kind of harrowing in of information in a time where it's so crucial to have this freedom of information?
Yeah. So YouTube is ridiculous. That it's such a brain dead policy. It makes no sense on every level, because if you actually care about misinformation, uh, I think there's really two options if you care about misinformation as a social network like YouTube. Either just shut down and say, look, we're done because there's so much misinformation that, we don't want to be a part of this. If you actually cared, then you would just say, okay, shut down. The other option, which is the much more reasonable option, is to say, listen, it's ridiculous to act like you can control misinformation. If so, you need to allow all legal content, because if you are going to try to lock down misinformation, then yeah, you're going to end up being ridiculous and saying we're going to censor anything that goes against who, or you're going to end up having to censor most comedy, satire, mistakes. If somebody writes a blog and they just make a mistake, well, that's misinformation. So no one's allowed to make a mistake anymore. What they're saying is that you can't say, turmeric cures X, Y, or Z. I mean, like, okay, just because you say that it cures something, that doesn't mean that. I mean, yeah, it's a generalization, and it's probably not like an accurate headline for anybody to be using. It's better to say like turmeric can have, X benefit, as opposed
Right.
to saying that it cures something. But it's like, okay, guess what? Does this mean we can no longer make generalizations? Are generalizations misinformation just because, something is generally true? Like, we always have to be so specific. Like, it is completely unenforceable to eliminate misinformation. So actually, and this is what we've been working on, is approaching it from the other end. Allow the content, help educate people how to do research, provide context. We're working on some tools for applying sources to different articles. And, the way that Facebook and YouTube seem to be doing this is, they have truth organizations that seem to be getting tagged to different content. but it's not allowing like the full spectrum of debate to occur. So, they are picking centralized organizations to tag next to different content to say, hey, check out Snopes or check out,
Right.
World Health Organization. It's like, okay, actually, I think Snopes and World Health Organization, I'm happy to read what they have to say, because they probably do get a bunch of things right. Just because the World Health Organization got the mask thing, it doesn't mean I think that everything that they say is BS.
For sure.
But certainly they shouldn't be trusted completely with any specific topic. So the solution is just to give people tools that allow truth to kind of raise to the surface. And there's cool things happening in even in crypto with creating webs of trust and decentralized identity. And it's like we have to be smarter than just banning things, but that's kind of old news.
For sure. And I think for a lot of people, truth is subjective based on their own personal ideals and visions. And looking at like
Exactly.
and for Minds, and Uptrend as well, like we're essentially, I feel like, an experiment in what happens when you allow freedom of speech to exist on a platform. So I'd love to hear, because for example, we have Gab as well. It's a big freedom of speech platform, and they've been a little bit, I feel like, overall branded as alt-right just because it exists on the platform. I believe Minds has a little bit of that as well, and I'm just curious as to what you think that dynamic is. Because all these people are looking for a home to like express their views, which may not be mainstream views. And how, when you have these, I guess you could say, fringe groups moving into a community because it's the only place they can go, how does that impact the community dynamic? And how do you stay positive and scalable so that Jolene, 42-year-old mom, can come on without getting totally bombarded by things she doesn't want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Gab is polarized from the top down. I think that their policy is it's a better policy than Google and Facebook. But the way that they're messaging with the public, to me, to my taste, is too polar. It's their, like, for instance, their Twitter account is basically used as like a conservative spouting board. We try to stay more neutral in order to be more accessible. We do get certain extreme content on, both the left and the right, actually. But that's been one of our biggest challenges, is because we're providing this vent for people and a surfacing mechanism for all content. Sometimes you'll sign up and you'll see a piece of content that, is just not what you're trying to see. And so we're really working on controlling that experience without burying anything subjectively. And so that's just something that over time, like with our new onboarding experience, like opting into different topics and opting into different levels in terms of, do you want to see NSFW? What do you want to see? As long as your context in the beginning is in your control, then I think that the two worlds can coexist fine. But it's definitely a technical challenge.
100%. Yeah. And I think filtration systems, and that's the tough thing is, you're adding filters and then you want to be able to give potentially equal opportunity for people across the platform, no matter what their voice is. So then how do you, allow people to have that same voice? I think it is such an interesting dynamic, and it is like just a big experimentation across the entire scope. What would have been some things since when you started, maybe you had a revision or direction on where you were heading with Minds, and then you've realized along the way, you're like, oh, okay, maybe that's not a reality and we're going to pivot this way? Or where have been your pivot points?
We had a big pivot point early on where we were trying to organize all of the free information on the internet. So we were trying to like tap into different archives of like public domain content, Creative Commons content, and like port it all in so that people could sort of get access to this archive of free knowledge. And I still sort of want to do that, but that was just a extremely difficult task and not really I don't know. It's still something I'm super passionate about. And we still do offer like Creative Commons licensing options to users and whatnot. But we were sort of trying to create this massive search engine for open content. And then that was very early on. And then we switched, but we didn't switch. We just realized that, you know, that's just, we needed more of a holistic focus for the platform than, you know, just on search. Those, search is just such a crazy market because, you know, you really just have Google and then like DuckDuckGo. And DuckDuckGo actually, they're using proprietary tools in the back end. So they've done a great thing, but actually I've been in touch with them trying to figure out how we can integrate search results, you know, global search results into Minds.
Right.
And there's restrictions on actually their API so that, you know, you can't even tap into it because I don't, so it's pretty nuts that we don't have like from the ground up a fully open source privacy focused search engine. Like even DuckDuckGo hasn't achieved something that's extendable. They're building on something anyway. That was sort of a tangent, but I guess I would say, yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead. There's a little lag. I'll let you go.
I'm sorry, man. Anyone listening too, I'm on a hotspot and because my internet was down, but it actually got fixed like mid call. But at this point, it is what it is. So probably not worth switching. Yeah. So the other thing that I was going to say is because of this issue, we made a big pivot to focus on building a jury system for our appeals process. So actually, when content gets reported now and we make a decision, our admins, that the reported person disagrees with, they can appeal it to a community jury of like 12 random active users. And then those users vote on if they think that our decision was right or wrong. And eventually we want to extend that into the initial decision phase so that our admins wouldn't even be making the initial decision. The community would be making the initial decision. And I'm so glad we did that. That, you know, we weren't focused, I think, enough on user experience in preventing people from seeing what they don't want to see. And to be honest, that is a huge issue for scaling. You need to not show people stuff that they don't want to see. And that's probably, you guys, I'm sure, struggle with it as well. So I'm curious your experience.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think, we're playing with the same thing you are. And I think filtration systems, while not, and like giving people the power of choice, I think that's just like the overall summary is opting into what you want to see, having filters on things that, because the big thing we want to prevent is shadow banning or, you know, putting like, you know, lowering the visibility of content just because we deem it's not good. Because if it's legal, it should exist and it should have equal visibility, but people shouldn't have to be subjected to see that kind of thing. I feel it's kind of like, it's like freedom of speech. It's like, sure, you know, have your voice, speak what you want, but that doesn't mean that somebody has to listen to it. So that's the balance that we're playing with. And I think filtration systems. Yeah.
I'm really interested in how you guys are handling that on your front page because, you know, for instance, so we've had front pages similar to yours, and I think this is like the best kind of front page where you can just show a ton of content. I think it's better for, you know, new people coming, being able to see what's going on, what's popular. But the problem is that, you know, totally NSFW, like, do you have NSFW filters? Is that how you handle it?
We don't have them yet, actually. We're going to be implementing in the next little while. Like we started in a very, I guess you could say like hands-on model. Like we only allowed the topic of cryptocurrency. And then from there, we've been gradually expanding out to the place that we want to get, just because our build was a lot more, I guess you could say humble and from the grounds than most projects out there. So we just have been like trying to scale slowly, make sure that everything is going the right way. So right now, essentially on the NSFW thing, like for nudity, if it's allowed on a beach, it's allowed on Uptrend. eventually, once we build out the filter systems, then we will allow other things. But we need those filtration systems first. Otherwise, like exactly what we're talking about, then you're going to start seeing things you don't want to see, scares away people. It turns
Right.
into something totally different.
So is the front page a raw trending feed of the whole network?
Yeah, so there's two different options. So one is trend, well, I mean like just top, which is the top posts
Hmm.
ever, which we need to build out a little bit more. But the one that you're probably looking at is called popular.
Popular, yeah.
And so that one is in a 48-hour window, number of comments plus number of upvotes equals algorithm score. So super MVP algorithm that just is very easy for people to understand. We'll be building it out more over time, and like you mentioned with reverse chronological, we believe there's tons of validity there. Our whole thing is just how do we make it equal for everybody? Because like you see on Facebook pages, that's clearly not equal at all. Yeah, it's crazy.
Nice, nice. Great. Well, yeah, man, we'll definitely figure out ways to collaborate more. Um, yeah, I have to hop in like 5 minutes, but is there
Okay.
anything, is there anything else you want to hit on?
Yeah, maybe to wrap it up, just to kind of get your vision on like big next milestones for Minds, where you see social media evolving.
Right now, we are so focused on UX. If you can check out the experimental mode if you go to minds.com/canary, like canary in a coal mine kind of thing, and it's been a huge effort. We literally revamped the entire front end. So we revamped the wallet, the discovery section, analytics, the navigation, and now we're doing channels and groups and messenger, and so it's been monumental. But I think keeping people engaged is the key, because I so many people support the philosophy, but unless you're providing a competitive experience with like Twitter and YouTube
Hmm.
and Facebook, it's just, they're not going to stick around. The reason people stick around is because we have this benefit of engagement and reach and monetization. Though that's even, the barrier to entry, there's a learning curve to figuring out how the gamification reward system works, and figuring out how to boost, and people are like, oh well, what's on chain versus off chain, and what's going on here. So trying to simplify everything so that it
Mm,
it feels like a game,
yeah.
and creating clean UX is just a requirement for mass scaling. We're also working on localization, internationalization, so that we can get everything translated, which is huge. I mean, that from a foundational perspective, it's like, would you ever use an app that was only in like Chinese by default? No, you wouldn't do it. And, most people are not going to do that just because, we speak English and, it's the most popular language doesn't mean, or is it? It is.
It is, yeah.
It is. Yeah.
I think Spanish number two.
Yeah. So that's huge. But like with Angular, which is what we use for our front end, this is a little bit technical, but we haven't been able, they haven't supported building every language in runtime to this point. So you had to do a different build for every language, and it's just messy and takes time. And so we just haven't been, and we don't want to use Google Translate. So,
Right.
that it's like we make things harder for ourselves on purpose, which sucks, but it's sort of how it has to be. I mean, if we had there's so many corners we could have cut by using proprietary integrations and more Google tools, but we just aren't about that. So it's going to be slower for us, but that's okay. I think it's more sustainable in the long run. And, otherwise our whole roadmap is public. I mean, we're working on, um, let's see. Oh, we're working on a new monetization feature where you can actually send offers to people to like make a video. So I could send you an offer for
Oh yeah.
$100 to make a video about something. And then, you would send it back to me, or you could publish it. We're also creating like more of a digital marketplace in terms of, if you're a writer, some components of like a Fiverr type marketplace where, digital services can be marketed, but also like I could pay you to respond to my message. We're trying to monetize every component of the site so that people are, I think, earn.com did that with, and they got bought by Coinbase, but, they had this whole system where you could pay to get a response to your email. And I think that it's a really important idea, especially in terms of attracting a lot of influencers, because it's just not worth people's time to respond to messages unless there's something in it for them. And even if you look at, there's a pretty novel app out there called Cameo now. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's sort of like a B-list actor and celebrity platform where like you can pay them $100 and they'll make a video for you. Huh. But it's actually fascinating because it's creating an independent revenue stream for them, and it's working, and it's actually starting to scale. And we've been actually playing with that idea for a long time. So it's cool to see that they've proven the concept to a degree, and we had already been starting to build it. But the shifts of the internet are going to require celebrities and influencers and all of the thought leaders. So you need to incentivize those people to come over. We've done a pretty good job with it. We have a bunch of like really big YouTubers and some great academics and whatnot who have joined. But convincing influencers to join new apps is very hard. Instagram and whatnot have such a stranglehold that they need to have that incentive. And so incentives is really the big thing that we're working on, along with just clean UX. And it's really hard. It takes a long time.
I fully agree with that.
I know you know of all people.
Yeah. So last final question, because you guys got 1,000,001 things on the go, and like it's a monumental task to take up. What, if any, is going to be the big sigh of relief, or like in the near future, like a sigh of relief where you're like, oh, like, okay, we got that handled?
I really want to get this whole payment revamp out, like sort of what I was just talking about with, the monetized messenger, monetized groups, monetized videos, this whole offer, sort of peer-to-peer offer structure, so that, creating more of a monetized digital marketplace. That is a fundamental thing. Like it's very easy in a tech startup to be in la la land where you don't need to focus on fundamentals of like revenue and growth. And I mean, well, a lot of tech companies are focused just on growth, but not revenue. And so, focusing more on monetization and getting that rolled out so that it starts getting more traction, and we get the payouts, spiking, and we get people paying peer-to-peer and get those numbers spiking. That is really what I want to see, because I want to help people make money. And if we can help people make money, then I think we're going to make money. So, and same with the crypto, and working on getting our token easier to use and liquid and these kinds of things is, yeah, that's where I'm at. What about you? What's your goal?
I feel like very much in the same shoes as you, where I don't have a spot where I'm like, oh, this is gonna be such a big relief, because it's always, you think there's one goal, then there's another goal and another goal and another goal. So I think the relief just honestly comes through like taking an hour or two to like go outside for a walk, put in some music, and just breathe.
Oh, I see what you're saying. God, my
Right.
head's so deep in it that I'm thinking about like tech deliverables.
I fully understand where you're coming from, man. I feel the exact same. It never ends. And I know you're a busy guy. You said you had to head out 10 minutes ago. So I want to say thanks so much for coming on, Bill. I'm looking forward to chatting with you more and seeing what synergies we can drum up.
Yeah, man, let's do it again for sure. And we'll figure out some synergies. Thanks so much.
Love it. And for everyone who's tuning in, see you guys next time.
Cheers.